Why does your AI coding assistant nail a 10-line function but completely fall apart the moment you ask it to refactor 3 interconnected files? That gap, between snippet generator and actual developer, is exactly what Opus 5 is built to close. On Frontier Bench version 0.1, a benchmark built for complex, production-style coding tasks, Claude Opus 5 scored 43.3%. Its predecessor, Opus 4.8, scored 18.7%. That's more than double the performance, at the same price point. If that benchmark jump is real and the price hasn't moved, the economics of AI-assisted development just changed overnight. But is the benchmark telling the full story? To understand why this moment matters, start in February 2025. Computer scientist Andre Karpathy dropped a term into a post that stuck: vibe coding. The idea: describe what you want in plain language, let the AI handle the implementation. Karpathy wasn't describing a productivity trick. He was describing a shift in what developers actually do, from writing syntax to describing intent. The code becomes an output, not the work itself. The vibe coding loop has 4 stages: describe the feature in natural language, review the generated code, test the output, then iterate. The developer's cognitive load shifts from syntax to judgment. Fast forward to July 24, 2026. Anthropic ships Claude Opus 5, and positions it specifically as the model that makes vibe coding viable at production scale, not just for demos. What makes Opus 5 different isn't just raw benchmark scores. It's designed for agentic coding, tasks where the model doesn't hand you a snippet and stop, but autonomously works across an entire feature end-to-end. Here's what agentic coding looks like in practice. A developer at a fintech startup asks Opus 5 to migrate their legacy payment service from REST to GraphQL. Instead of returning partial code, the model reads the existing service, generates the schema, rewrites the resolvers, and updates the test suite across 11 files. The 1 million token context window is what enables this. Most codebases that matter in production, the ones with years of accumulated logic, are too large for smaller context windows to hold at once. Think of the context window like a surgeon's field of view during an operation. The wider it is, the more of the patient's anatomy they can see, and the less they have to work blind. Token efficiency matters as much as raw capability. Early Opus 5 customers reported it achieving comparable results to Opus 4.8 running at maximum reasoning mode, while generating 26% fewer tokens on average. Stack the pricing up, Opus 5 runs at $5 per million input tokens and $25 per million output tokens. That's the same rate as its Opus 4.8 predecessor, for dramatically higher capability. Now meet Maya. She's a product manager at a mid-sized logistics company. She has a clear mental model of what she wants to build, a shipment delay alert system, but zero background in writing code. Maya types her first prompt: build a Python service that checks our shipment database every hour, identifies orders delayed more than 48 hours, and sends automated email alerts to account managers. That's it. No function signatures, no import statements. Opus 5 doesn't hand Maya a skeleton. It produces working code, a complete scheduler, database query logic with parameterized SQL, and an email template, ready to run, not ready to be finished. Behind the scenes, the model is running what researchers call agentic reasoning. It's not auto-completing, it's planning the task, identifying dependencies, and sequencing its own steps. Maya spots an issue: the alert emails aren't grouping shipments by account manager, each delayed order fires a separate email. She describes the fix in plain English, and Opus 5 refactors the email service, changing the output structure without breaking the scheduler integration. This is the funnel vibe coding collapses. Traditionally, idea spec architect engineer QA deploy. With agentic coding, Maya goes from idea to testable code in one session, skipping 3 stages. The stakes here aren't abstract. Non-technical users, product managers, analysts, operations leads, represent a massive untapped pool of builders who've been locked out purely by syntax. But Maya's use case is a greenfield project. What about the harder problem? Large, legacy codebases that senior engineers have been the only ones who could safely touch. That's where the 1 million token window becomes critical. A senior engineer at the same logistics company uses Opus 5 for a refactor they'd been postponing for 6 months, migrating a 40,000-line inventory management system off a deprecated ORM. The model reads the full codebase, identifies every ORM call, and generates the migration plan before writing a single line. The effort setting lets that engineer tune the model's behavior. High effort for the complex ORM replacement logic. Dial it down for the boilerplate connection string updates. Same session, different resource consumption where it counts. Anthropic's internal framing calls Opus 5 nearly the intelligence of Fable 5 at half the cost. That's the positioning, and it matters because Fable 5 is their top-tier frontier model. Opus 5 is the one designed for sustained, long-running agentic work. Vibe coding isn't one use case, it branches into distinct categories of value: greenfield app building for non-technical users, complex refactors for engineers, debugging root cause analysis, and end-to-end feature development. Debugging is where agentic reasoning earns its keep. A developer pastes a production error trace into Opus 5, a null pointer exception buried 4 stack frames deep in a service they didn't write. The model traces the call chain, identifies the unvalidated nullable field at the source, and patches it. The fix isn't a suggestion, it's a precise, targeted diff. One method call changed, null check added, no collateral edits to unrelated logic. That specificity is what separates agentic debugging from a generic try adding a null check response. Early adopters are noticing. Teams using Opus 5 in agentic pipelines reported it hitting performance thresholds they'd previously only seen in maximum reasoning mode, while actually reducing their monthly token bills. Maya, back at the logistics company, is now shipping her second project, a returns processing dashboard, without a single developer involved. She describes UI components, iterates on layout, and deploys. The AI handles the implementation layer completely. What's happening cognitively in vibe coding is a shift in the bottleneck. The constraint moves from can I write this syntax correctly to can I think clearly about what I want. For experienced developers, that's liberating. For non-technical users, it's the difference between building and not building. Enterprise teams are wiring Opus 5 into multi-step agent pipelines. One agent scans incoming bug reports, a second reproduces the bug in a sandboxed environment, a third generates the fix, and a fourth writes the regression test. Opus 5 acts as the reasoning core at each node. The compounding effect becomes clear when you run the numbers. If a developer was previously running Opus 4.8 at maximum reasoning for complex tasks, switching to Opus 5 at the same price delivers 26% fewer tokens consumed and more than double the task success rate on hard coding problems. February 2025 to July 2026 is 16 months. In that window, vibe coding went from a coin term with limited tooling to a production viable approach backed by a model genuinely capable of autonomous multi-file work. Here's the answer to the open question: why aren't more teams already shipping with it? Because the economics only just cleared. Frontier-level coding capability at Opus tier pricing didn't exist before July 2026. The benchmark jump and the price hold happening simultaneously is the actual unlock. For developers already using AI tools, the adoption path is additive. You don't rebuild your workflow, you extend existing pipelines with longer tasks, fewer handoffs, and less manual stitching between AI-generated fragments. Honest assessment: vibe coding is not a replacement for engineering judgment, and Opus 5 is not infallible. It scores 43.3% on Frontier Bench. That means it fails on 56.7% of the hardest tasks. Security-critical code, performance-sensitive systems, and compliance-heavy domains still demand human review at every step. The right mental model for Opus 5 is a very capable junior engineer who needs architectural guidance but can own implementation. You don't skip code review, you do less of it on the obvious parts and more on the logic that actually matters. Maya finishes her returns dashboard. The senior engineer completes the ORM migration in 2 weeks instead of 3 months. Neither outcome was possible with the previous generation of tools, not because the idea was wrong, but because the model capability wasn't there yet. The stakes for teams that delay adoption are concrete. Development speed becomes a competitive variable, not just internally, but against competitors who are shipping features faster because they've rebuilt their workflow around agentic tools. For non-technical builders, the barrier shift is even more dramatic. If you can describe a system clearly, you can build one. The question is no longer can I code this, it's can I think precisely about what I want. Pull the benchmark number back one more time. Opus 4.8 at 18.7% to Opus 5 at 43.3% on Frontier Bench is a generational jump in less than 2 years. If that pace continues, the 56.7% failure rate on hard tasks shrinks faster than most engineering teams are planning for. What changes for senior developers isn't relevance, it's leverage. The engineers who learn to direct agentic tools effectively will own more surface area, ship more complex features, and spend their cycles on the decisions that actually require deep expertise. The vibe coding revolution isn't about replacing developers. It's about collapsing the distance between what you can imagine and what you can ship. Claude Opus 5 is the first model where that collapse becomes economically real at scale. Same price, more than double the coding capability. If you're thinking about where agentic coding fits in your own workflow, or whether vibe coding is hype or a genuine shift, subscribe. We cover these models as they ship, with real benchmark data and production use cases, not just announcement summaries.